Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, March 14th, 2019, and today we're going to be analyzing two polls pertaining to the Democratic and Republican primaries in the year 2020. So we're starting off with the Morning Consult poll, the polling organization that has consistently come out with data. They have the most polls out for national polls for the 2020 Democratic primary race, and they have been pretty accurate in terms of approval ratings of the president nationwide, in particular states as well. So I would consider the Morning Consult as a pretty trustworthy source. But they don't exactly ask as many questions as Monmouth would or other polling organizations that, like Emerson, that would include, 35 plus questions, but only publish one on the main site, like Real Clear Politics. Morning Consult, they ask a number of important questions. I just do think that some other things that could be included, in terms of most important issues for specific candidates, things like that. I think that could be a really good help in terms of analyzing how the race is actually going to turn out. So there's a lot of data here. We have key takeaways here. This is all provided by the Morning Consult, so no, I did not make this. You can find this on their website. They upload these for almost every one of the polls that they take. Over here, candidates have room to grow, things like that. That's not exactly what we're going to be talking about. It's just going to be the pure numbers and looking at its relation to other questions taken in the poll. So as of right now, Joe Biden is the front runner with 31% of the vote. Bernie Sanders at 27% of the vote. I believe as of right now they do these weekly. They're probably going to move over into doing them probably bi-weekly. But right now, Joe Biden leads Bernie Sanders. Kamala Harris comes in way down third. Elizabeth Warren and Beto O'Rourke tie for fourth place. Now, these numbers are really good for someone like Bernie Sanders. Number one, when he started off back in 2015, he was not even close to Hillary Clinton whatsoever. 2016 came around, and actually, as the Monmouth poll points out, which I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes, they point out that in March of 2016, Bernie Sanders was at 37% nationwide and 55% for Hillary Clinton. So right now, even though he's underperforming where he was before, obviously there are a lot of other candidates in the race. It's just he's a lot closer to the nomination than 2016. But right now, this is not a two-person race whatsoever. I mean, you see all the candidates there. And right now, if we're looking at, again, frontrunners, Joe Biden is going to be the main target for Bernie Sanders. Joe Biden hasn't even announced that he's running for president, and he's leading the Democratic primary voters, which I do think is pretty interesting. Now, besides these pure numbers alone, looking at Democratic primary voters in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada. The interesting thing is it looks a little bit better for Joe Biden. He has the same percentage lead, but a larger number of the vote, 33% compared to 31%, and 29% for Bernie Sanders compared to 27%, also benefits Bernie Sanders. The only interesting thing is here, number one, we already know New Hampshire and South Carolina are going to go a certain way. Nevada and Iowa are going to be areas where it's going to be a little bit more contested. Obviously, Iowa being the first caucus, or first, I guess, primary type of election of the season that was always focused on by both sides. I think Bernie Sanders is going to do pretty well in that one. I have yet to see data that shows him leading in Iowa at this point, but I do think we're going to start seeing that pretty soon. But looking at a number of these stragglers, I think this is really important because Joe Biden, sure, he's at 33%. But then you take the rest of the voters after the second place. I mean, sure, Kamala Harris voters probably could go to Joe Biden. Elizabeth Warren voters are probably going to go to Bernie Sanders. Beto O'Rourke, however, some people think of him as progressive. He's a lot more claimed with the establishment Democrats now. Same with Cory Booker. So if we're looking at a lot of these candidates, they're all going to go just separate ways between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. It'll probably end up being a two-person race between the two. But as of right now, Joe Biden and Bernie lead in both of these states. I do think that this is a good sign for Bernie Sanders. We're looking at, these races weren't exactly too favorable for him. Iowa sure was close, but it was still a Hillary Clinton victory. The only state out of these four that he won in 2016 was New Hampshire. And if you look back, South Carolina was a blowout for Clinton. Nevada was not exactly that big as much of a South Carolina win for Clinton, but it was still a win regardless. New Hampshire was definitely not a win for Hillary Clinton. But Iowa was a very narrow victory, but still a victory regardless. And the interesting thing this time around is that superdelegates do not get to vote on the first ballot. If you're confused as to what that means, it means that if a Democratic candidate gets a majority out of pledged delegates, meaning over 50% of them, there is no second vote, and superdelegates do not have a say. Whereas back in 2016, it was possible for a candidate to win with superdelegates on their side. Not naming names here. I wasn't actually hinting that at anyone, but it was just a possibility back then. But looking at these early numbers, pretty good signs for both Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. Now, here's what's interesting. Bernie Sanders is always flaunted as the most popular senator nationwide. And amongst these voters, 76% of them do have a favorable opinion of Bernie Sanders, but 81% of them have a favorable opinion of Joe Biden. That's very interesting to me. Bernie Sanders, everyone loves him, right? Well, it seems like Joe Biden may have more of that charm than Bernie Sanders, which is one thing that I found very interesting. Bernie Sanders' likability is argued by many of his supporters, and the argument is somewhat taken away by this poll, showing Joe Biden ahead in terms of favorability. But again, things can change. Obviously, Joe Biden known as being a gaffe machine. So again, things can drastically change as Hillary Clinton went from these type of numbers down to high 30s. Other candidates on this list, like Amy Klobuchar, Kristen Gillibrand, Julian Castro, Terry McAuliffe, who wasn't announced, Tulsi Gabbard, John Delaney, John Hickenlooper, Jay Inslee. Not even try to pronounce that. I do know how to pronounce it, I think, but I'm not going to try it because don't need to right now. Steve Bullock, I don't think announced. But a number of these candidates, these lower level candidates, as I said before, are not even known. Some of these candidates, 62% don't even know who he is. I mean, he is the mayor of a small Indiana town, Indiana town. And obviously only like 2% don't know who Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden is. Now, for the GOP primary, Trump is not going to have a lot of competition. Okay, we only have one question here, actually. 2 questions, depending on where you live. All GOP primary voters, pretty much only 20% don't support Donald Trump being nominated for the GOP primary. Then in early states, 20% as well. So it's about even. Actually, it is even. Just a little bit less of don't know / no opinion in the GOP and early primary polls. We have national Trump approval rating. Right now, he's down in a number that actually, this red wall here, not so green looking at that. Funny because red is negative for Trump, but positive in the general election. But yeah, up across the red wall here, it's very, very bad for Donald Trump in terms of approval. Very, very bad. Like even worse for swing states: Arizona, Ohio, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida. The list goes on. Now, moving over to the Monmouth poll, we have some interesting numbers here. Number one, we have a GOP primary poll. We have the question says, who would you support if the 2020 Republican nomination contest was between Donald Trump and former Massachusetts Governor William Weld? Now, number one, Bill Weld is not too well known nationwide. That needs to be taken into account. But he's not going to really have a shot at the presidency or also the Republican nomination. As of right now, March 2019, 54% of people are Trump firm, which means that he already wins the nomination if it was just based off that alone. 20% are Trump but possible Weld, and 8% are Weld. 10% are unsure but possible Weld. 18% of people drawing away from you and your party is not exactly the best thing, but also looking at the approval rating amongst Republicans, it pretty much mimics these numbers. It's not that big of a deal. Obviously, Trump is probably not going to be primaried. Now, Larry Hogan being thrown into this mix, around the same numbers. We just have a little bit less support for Hogan, probably because Hogan hasn't even made an exploratory committee. He's probably not going to run. Trump firm, 55%. Trump but possible Hogan, 20%. Unsure but possible Hogan, 11%. So around the same numbers, just off by 1 to 2 percentage points. Now, this is where the meat is. The registered Democratic voters discussed the 2020 Democratic nomination. Now, Joe Biden is at 28% compared to Bernie Sanders at 25%. If you look back in January, Bernie Sanders definitely did gain. He gained by 9%. Okay, Kamala Harris actually went down. Elizabeth Warren stayed the same. But O'Rourke went down. Cory Booker gained. Amy Klobuchar gained. Mike Bloomberg went down. So what changed? Unsure voters. Bernie Sanders got a lot of them. By a lot, I mean a lot. Joe Biden went down by 1%, while Bernie Sanders went up by 9%. If that rate continues, Bernie Sanders will be your nominee before the nomination process even starts. But again, things do change. Joe Biden is likely to announce, which means that he's going to get a number of those unsure voters who aren't exactly sure if they're voting for Biden or O'Rourke, Harris, whichever one of those establishment Democrats. Not saying O'Rourke's an establishment Democrat, just a lot of those voters would be more inclined to vote for him over someone like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. But right now, you're looking at these numbers. Very, very good for Bernie Sanders. Now, looking at if the Joe Biden doesn't run for president, the pathway is cleared for Bernie Sanders. Yes, Kamala Harris's numbers go up. Yes, Elizabeth Warren's numbers go up. We're seeing a little increase in a couple of these candidates, but Bernie Sanders is ahead, has double the amount of support as Kamala Harris. Right now, you could say he has, more than double of the percent of support, but that's taking out someone above him. So Bernie Sanders would have an easy pathway to the presidency if Joe Biden doesn't run, which doesn't seem too likely, to be completely honest with you. Now, again, favorability rating, as in the morning consult poll, Joe Biden tops the list at 76% of approval rating, and it was at 80% 2 months ago. Bernie Sanders went up in approval, but by 2%, 70% approval rating. Then it goes to Kamala Harris, then Warren, and then Cory Booker, and then we see the rest of them. But this is the thing that really gets me. You're looking at these polling numbers, you get what you will from it, but this is something that very much could invalidate the entire poll itself. In the 2016 race for the Democratic nomination, did you support Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders? This was asked to all of the questions, to all of the voters that voted in this poll or responded, respondents. Hillary Clinton got 61%. Bernie Sanders got 34%. If you recall, it was a 55 to 45 margin, give or take a couple thousand votes, between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Obviously, Hillary Clinton at 55 and Bernie Sanders at 45. They're underestimating him. And that's something that's really going to hurt a couple of establishment Democrats who are basing their numbers purely off this polls. That's the thing that I don't like about sometimes when you're looking at Real Clear Politics. You're looking at the face value numbers, but when you look at this is something that very well could invalidate this poll particularly. But if we're looking at other polls, well, they all agree pretty much with this poll, so maybe this one isn't exactly wrong. They just could be polling the wrong area. Maybe everyone's wrong. We don't know. We'll see when the caucuses and primaries come around. Again, I do think the Democratic Party is underestimating Bernie Sanders again. He's probably going to have some upsets, but Joe Biden still seems like he could pull this thing off, but probably with the help of superdelegates. So, so that wraps up today's video. Thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below. Comment down what you guys want me to do next. And I hope you guys enjoyed this in-depth analysis. Comment down below also if you want me to keep doing these or not. I won't. If you don't want me to, I will if you do. But yeah, so again, thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below again, and I'll see you all tomorrow.